Welcome once again to Natural 2, our unscripted. I like pointing that out for some reason. I feel
Oh,
like,
clearly it's scripted, can't you tell?
yeah, well, I feel like we do pretty well for not having a script or a teleprompt. This is from the heart.
hmm
This is our D&D and tabletop from the heart talk show.
hmm
And for this week, we have curated some fine selection of topics from the community. And since we don't yet have a community of our own, we stole some from Reddit.
Yep. No, layman's term, we scroll through Reddit and we pick the topics that seem interesting.
Yeah, that's right. But uh, there's some stuff here worth talking about, in my opinion. So the one that interests me the most, and you posted this to our Discord, but
hmm
I also had seen it prior to that because I have, let's say, an interest in the topic. Um, on April 1st, it was a post about a table at which it had caught on for the players to play topless.
Because they were
And
barbarians, correct? Was the explanation.
yeah, right. And so they were getting into character, they were psyching each other up. Sounded like they were having a great time, honestly, but the DM was not comfortable with it. It was just too much for them, and I think, as I recall, even when the DM asked the players, this is not, I'm not feeling this, maybe the shirts can go back on, but they were rebuffed. um can't stifle the beef,
hmm
quote unquote, I think it was. So I just wanted to take just a brief moment to uh kind of take our temperature about this. Personally, I think the DM needs to lighten up. Stop being such a prude, right? Like,
hmm
this is not, I think this is a homogenous table.
hmm
So there's no, like, as far as I can understand from the post, there aren't any issues with jealous partners or other inappropriate behavior. Just some dudes having a good time without their shirts.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a joking answer to this and a kind of serious answer to this. What I would initially kind of say, which is more the jovial aspect of my nature, is like, oh, come on, dude, like, really, you're gonna complain about that kind of shit? But if I sit there and kind of mull over it for more than a few seconds and actually take it seriously, if there is something making you uncomfortable at the table, it is perfectly valid to voice it. And if it is something that I don't want to say that, a dude being bare chested at the table is some sort of like, horrific sight, I guess, depending on what kind of dude it is. But it does kind of begin to cross that line of like inappropriate behavior at the table. Like, this could be, I don't want to say like a precursor, but it's very much along the same veins of like, maybe inappropriate touching or jesting or like using someone equipment roughly. Like, this is one of those behaviors that like it's not bad to ask to stop. And so it's kind of a weird area of like, don't spoil their fun, but if it does make you uncomfortable, it does make you uncomfortable. And there, that's not your fault, I suppose. So yeah, I'm kind of riding the line, and the safe answer, or the answer I think I would eventually come to, is like have a serious talk with the players, and if they're just like, "Ah, come on, dude, just like grab a fucking banger and let's just keep going," it's like then you might want to actually sit them down and be like, "No, I'm serious. This is making me uncomfortable," because they might think that he's just kind of joking around as well, and if you don't dispute that, they'll just kind of write it off. Is my kind of best understanding of what probably happened. So.
Are you being woke right now, Nathan? That sounds a little woke to me.
So the I want to be consistent in all of my advice, right? I want to apply my broad strokes broadly and not be a hypocrite. That's usually the goal, right? And if this was any other situation, like let's say that the DM was a female and it was all dudes, or it was a dude and all the players were females, right? Like if there's, or who knows what this guy's sexuality is, we're not diving that deep into this kind of surface level joke topic, but there are reasons to be
Joke
uncomfortable
topic,
around
what?
around
Excuse
this
me?
less serious topic, I suppose is how I should quantify it. But if there is a reason to make him uncomfortable, then there is, and there you can't say that that's wrong. And if he wants to bring it up, he wants to bring it up. And if he wants to make that a point of contention that will make or break the game, that's really up to him. Due to the dynamic, I would put the onus on the players to be like, all right, sorry, didn't know that was your limit. Put the shirts back on. I think that's roughly where I would land. Is like if they ask for it and they make it clear, there's not a lot of wiggle room there.
Well, I think what he's got is a table of players who are all 100% engaged and
Hmm.
capitalize on that, appreciate it.
Hmm.
If it's really getting to him, then people that have been in the hobby longer than me say that in the beginning, only the DM had dice at all, and they would play behind an actual DM screen
Hmm.
where their whole deal is back there, and you can't see them. All you can just hear this voice
Just
coming
puts
from.
on blinders. Yeah.
So just get behind a literal DM screen if it bothers you
Hmm.
that much. Or what I'm going to say, my advice here is one up them and take your pants off. You're the DM. You have to assert dominance.
I don't
Take
think that's great advice, James.
take off your pants. Anyway,
Anyway, I it is weird because like if it was you approaching me, right, and you had this problem, I would very much be like, dude, lighten the fuck up, right? But I think it's because we have a kind of already established dynamic, right? I
we've
understand
already
who
seen
you
each
are.
other naked.
That is true, right? I mean, that's every Thursday, right? So tomorrow we're still on schedule for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
counting
anyway,
the days.
mark it down the calendar. But when you're giving advice to this group you don't know about this dynamic you don't know, and that is kind of the reason that I would approach it with a bit more tact than I would myself, right? But I can assume, hopefully, that they have some sort of repertoire, that's how you say that, I suppose, built up so that he could be like, guys, cut the shit, or they could be like, dude, you're being a fucking hard ass, lighten the fuck up. And I imagine a lot of that's going on already. A lot of the time when people post on Reddit to, feel their woes, it's not usually because they're actually looking for advice. It's more that they just want to vent or share their opinion or expose some stupid shit going on.
True.
So I
Or just
think,
get points.
yeah, I imagine the scenario is already solved one way or another. Again, one of the solutions could be that that's the breaking point and the group shatters, which would be kind of a strange thing to shatter on, but if it does, it does. But yeah, it was weird. I think there was also a follow-up post, like jokingly 2 days later, of like, I can't get my players to like take their shirts off whenever they rage and it's upsetting me or something stupid like that, like the flip-flop of the scenario. But yeah, I don't know. Overall, I think there is what's the word I'm looking for? Responsibility on both sides. Everything is communication, give and take, like any relationship.
A tabletop game is already such an intimate experience. What's a bare chest between friends?
See,
Uh,
I like okay, like the
and maybe they could
scenario.
wear tank tops.
Mhm.
Maybe just wear a tank top. Would that be?
If the whole group this week, when we went to play D&D, showed up completely shirtless and just like established that was going to be the thing, that would throw me off. I'm not going to lie. That would affect my amazing DM skills, my excellent flowing vocabulary. And so yeah, I don't think it would be beyond me to be like, guys, like it's funny and I'm glad you're going to kick out of it, but like, I want to play D&D. Put your goddamn shirts back on.
Uh,
Well, I think we're at an impasse, which is the rare occurrence on Natural too.
you're a beef stifler.
I
That's
I
I
am an
wouldn't have expected.
appropriate beef expresser. There's a
Like,
time and a
well,
place.
I'd like to consider myself a man of some taste, at least, 50% of the time. I like a good wine. I like fine cheeses, but sometimes you have to ask, where's the beef?
I
But
can't tell if this is your genuine advice or if you're memeing it up.
well, let me say this, and this will be the end of it. And I'm talking to you. You know who you are. You're watching right now, and you're getting ready to flame us,
If
and
you
you
haven't
want to know.
already.
You want to know if we know, and I'm telling you right now, we know. Just relax. All right.
All right, bang the gavel.
Yep.
So next on the chopping block of our absolutely enthralling back and forth.
All right. The next topic is someone wants advice for running a montage. Their party is getting ready for a climactic encounter, and the DM wants to give it its due by giving everyone a chance to have a moment, have some cinematic expression of their preparation without, I assume, bogging everything down and having 2 whole sessions that are nothing but prep.
Mm-hmm. This whole area is kind of a complicated thing to give advice to because it very much depends on like the energy and the vibe of the group. And so one player base will handle it completely different from the next. But the best way that I would envision going about this is giving the players a lot more agency than they're used to. And if your players aren't experienced with this or familiar with it, there's going to be a little bit of, I guess, growing pains in that regard. Because there are a handful of times that I'll go to our Discord and be like, hey guys, like you have this time to work with this or this, I don't know, thread to go and pursue. What do you want to do about it? What do you want to ask? What questions do you have? And then it's just crickets or shrugs or memes or gifs, and there's no like actual engagement there. So I think you have to make it very clear that if you're trying to remove a lot of that downtime, the shopping episode, the mechanics and logistics of all of this stuff in game, so that D&D can be D&D, you have to be very direct with your players of like, I am asking you for your input. This input will be one-to-one of what you are planning on doing or what you achieve. Like, you need to be straight with me here, Chief. Like, tell me what the fuck you're actually doing. That would be my best advice, is if you're trying to do it out of session or remove a lot of it out of session, to be very direct about it. On the DM side, be prepared to do a lot of spider webbing because all the players are going to want to do different things and ask different questions and interact with different NPCs and shopkeepers, and you're going to have to go back through a lot of your notes, and that's not the worst thing in the world, but just be prepared for that because that will happen. But yeah, I think that basically sums up the majority of it is, or at least that in regards to doing it outside of session. It's kind of a different topic discussing it inside session.
And yeah, just and one more bit of background here is that it does seem like the DM in this case wants to do it in session.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a good idea to get the players to prepare for their preparation montage.
Mm-hmm.
And think about things that they want to accomplish. And this is a good piece of general advice in my opinion. If you're trying to get some information out of a player or out of the party, especially if you're anticipating some dithering, try to make the question as specific as possible. Try to avoid open-ended questions like, what are you doing? Instead, you could ask, do you have a plan for dealing with the troll? How, or are you going to the armorer or the magic shop?
Mm-hmm.
That little bit further will sometimes cut through the fog of indecision.
One of the best pieces of advice that I've ever gotten for D&D, or I guess tabletop role-playing games, but that would also apply to this topic specifically, is whenever your player is trying to achieve something or do something or find something out, and you as a DM are struggling to guess what they want, cut out the middleman and ask them what they want. And I use this tool all the time throughout our game, where if you guys are trying to explore a cave, or you're asking about the structure of the actual building you're in, or like any sort of details that you ask for, and I'm not sure what you're trying to gain from asking that question, I'll be like, what do you need to know, or what do you want to know, or what is your intention? And that so often saves so much time, because in my earlier DMing years, or year, I suppose, I would try and guess and just throw things at the player, assuming this is what they wanted, and they would just keep casting it aside until I finally guessed correctly. So I think that would apply very well here. Again, kind of referring to the player agency thing of telling them if they want something or need something, it is within their grasp to achieve it and to just ask directly for it. And that will save a lot of time of like trying to guess your player's intentions. So
I think that covers that. Oh, and just due diligence, credit where credit's due. Getting the players to prepare ahead of time, that was also mentioned in the comments. So not trying to plagiarize.
well, I haven't actually.
But the open and non-open-ended questions, that's me.
I think, but having read the post, my last little tidbit on it, I'm curious if he is set on being, I guess, the narrator for it, or if he is putting the onus on the players to kind of present their various parts in it, because I think that would be a far more interesting way of doing it than him sitting there and describing every step of the way. If I were to do this task, I would be like, all right, James, for the past 3 days preparing for this big event and all this stuff going on, what has your character been doing and how does it look and all this kind of stuff, and letting you get into it and feeding in what we've said before, maybe even telling them to like have bulletin points or notes, or maybe even just like reading something they've pre-written, so the players don't feel on the spot. But yeah, I think that'd be a lot more effective than the DM just going, all right, and then player A did this, and then player B did this, and then player C got this amulet from NPC 7, and et cetera, et cetera.
The third and final topic in this value pack of an episode, you're welcome. What do you think is more important when designing a dungeon? Believable design, by which we mean a structure that makes sense. Yeah, how come there are no bathrooms in this castle? Or just playability. Fun.
You have a strong opinion on this, because I actually find this topic pretty interesting.
So I anticipate that you have a lot to say that will probably cover most of what I would think of. So the one thing that I'll say, that's my brilliant piece of advice, is that if you don't want to take the time to make a believable structure, for whatever reason, you can't be bothered, or don't want to mess with like the research into making it accurate, whatever. If you don't want to make something that makes sense, then see if you can just make a dungeon that isn't a structure. A dungeon that isn't a dungeon. A system of caves is perfect for this. But caves don't have to make sense. And there are probably very few players who also are spelunkers who can tell you, like, that's not how a cave would look. So, a system of caves or a series of groves in a forest, a winding valley. If you go to something in the natural world, then you can use that random dungeon generator and just paint it with a natural environment brush, and it'll be fine. You don't have to worry about whether it makes sense architecturally.
The first thing I will say on this, which will divide, I guess, our viewership or our listeners pretty severely, the vast majority of players are never going to notice these things and are never going to care about these things. This is very much a DM's burden and a DM's topic, at least in my mind. And this is coming from a person who, to give you the best example of when this plays out horribly wrong, way back in the Ismiliath days when we went to Northwatch Castle. And I actually looked up blueprints of old castles and how they worked and the different rooms and the diameters that they should be and how thick the walls should be and like where the master bedroom should be and how tall the ballroom usually is. Like I went down the rabbit hole. I spent hours making this map and I was super excited because it was going to be this incredible stealthy mission through this intricately designed and crafted and researched. No, we played maybe on an eighth of it, and even that part that we did play on, it was very bland of interacting with that environment whatsoever. So whatever you are building up in your mind as a DM about how intricately crafted everything has to be is not going to get noticed by our players. There are the few rare occasions when one player will be like, how did this 20-foot beast get through this 10-foot passage? And you sit there and go, oh, it collapsed after it entered. Yeah, clearly. But, yeah, the vast majority of the time, never gonna fucking notice. But, do you have anything after that? I saw your eyebrows go up a few different times, James.
No. I just the thoughts that I had were that I'm the type of player that will notice, but I'm also the type of player that typically won't say anything because I get it and I'm not a prick.
I mean, to be fair, I don't blame the players for not caring and not noticing about these things because they're very focused on playing the game and playing their character and like trying to be in that mindset and like, you know, being mechanically adept and being aware of their notes and the story going on there. Like there's a lot that a player is trying to keep up with actively, right? While the DM has, you know, all the prep work of hours of time beforehand to like worry about all these kind of things. So I think there's a very big gap in like what the actual production and consumption looks like on either end. But yeah, like I would say probably like 75% of players probably don't even think about it. Maybe 20% notice it, and then that 5% will notice and kind of bring it up and be sneery about it. And that's about it. And they're probably more vocal than the rest, so that's why people probably think it's a bigger problem than it is. But getting all that aside, because I think that's kind of the answer to the topic, if that's what you're looking for, I thoroughly enjoy this stuff. I love making accurate stuff. It is something that I feel like I am benefiting from because there are multiple examples in my past of making maps or making stories or quests for our group where it's like, okay, I've made this cave and I've made the majority of the shapes and whatnot. I'm trying to think of like where the traps and stuff are laid out. And I'm like, how on earth is this cave supporting 30 goblins? It's like, it can't. So I'll have to figure that out. Maybe there's another reason for it. Maybe I have to expand the map. Or I can kind of reference this at some point and explain it away. And I think it helps make the world feel a little bit more believable, or at least more thought out, because you actually are thinking it out. A lot of DMing or world building is just asking why 1,000 different times like a 4-year-old until you get to the basics and you're like, because gravity exists, man. That's why. You can't get past that. So I think if you enjoy it, you're going to do it anyway. If you don't enjoy it, no one's going to care or blame you for it. So go ahead and make a dungeon where the orcs 5 feet down the hall didn't hear the battle just taking place and are waiting there for the adventurers to come into the next room so they can ambush them, that's always drove me crazy, but I think it's more a me thing than a community thing.
I totally agree that it should be its own fun. I like learning about castles and how they looked and how they were laid out, and I've been in castle ruins and historical sites, and I just enjoy it. So you know, in that situation I would be like, well, you know, I still got to read about castles and watch videos about castles for however long, so you know, that should produce its own enjoyment, and if it doesn't produce enjoyment for you, skip it. it's okay. You know, look at like um, example I always go to uh, in my mind is Diablo. People love Diablo, and none of that shit makes any sense.
You're on
It's
level 50 of the dungeon with 7 different chasms in it, and it crisscrosses over itself a million different times.
yeah, it's just a pile of gray stone brick spaghetti,
Mhm.
and nobody worries about it. Millions of people play it and love it. So, you know, you can sell it. You can sell it and make it work if you need to.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that really is it at the end of the day. If you don't enjoy it, don't worry about it. If you do enjoy it, you're going to be doing it anyway. And players, if you're out there and you do notice that your DM has put some very strange amount of obsessive detail into some very small thing, acknowledge it, compliment it, or perhaps, better yet, leave the 10-foot radius of the map that you enter and explore it. Because they might like that from time to time.
The last random thought I have on this topic is if you're struggling, like if you have ideas for encounters and you're struggling with the connective tissue, I personally would have no problem switching back and forth from map and theater of the mind.
Hmm.
So it's between the encounters, between the important rooms, is just talking through, you know,
Hmm.
which direction are you going, what are you looking for, and then when you get to an important spot, put the map down, and it's just that room.
Another thing that I'll bring up real quick here at the end, and we have actually multiple examples of this now because God, we've been playing for far too long. Both going back to Lady Alarice and the little mind stuff that we did, and when we went to the Shadow Realm or the Shadow Lands and had the little like disconnected areas
They're
or whatever.
extra dimensional, astral plane
Mm.
type of shenanigans.
While there was a use case for that, because they were in this kind of different plane of existence and they could be entirely disconnected from one another, to make it more clear to the audience, this was basically little like set scenes that the characters were teleporting from one to the next, because again, they weren't like a physical realm. And that allowed me to just make that particular part of the map, like a small part of the room, or one room, or, you know, some very specific part of the chamber that they're functioning in, basically, right? While that is really useful in that scenario, you could apply this to the physical dungeons and buildings and structures that you're doing, where you just build that room or that staircase or that part of the dungeon. You don't have to have the entire thing drawn up on one map. And then you can leave, like James said, the area between vague. You could come up with any list of explanations as to why the orcs from the next room didn't come and reinforce the first. Maybe there's a large hallway or impassable terrain, or it has a silence spell in it or something, where if you're on a map, you're constrained to that physical barrier you've already placed for yourself of like, oh, there's only 10 feet between here and the next room. But if you leave some of that area up for you to interpret later down the road, I think it opens more doors for you, gives you a bit more variety to work with. So having these kind of spotlight encounter areas is a tool you could also use.
Well, I think that does it.
Yeah.
So if you have anything to say or nothing to say,
I
say it
would
down
be
below in the
impressed if
comments.
you watch this entire episode and have nothing to say.
Honestly, right? We're trying hard here, people.
From shirtless escapades to learning deep lore about old castles. Yeah, it's quite the range.
So, whatever you're thinking right now, you're thinking it right now, start typing it and put it down there.
Hmm.
It's easy. And like and subscribe.
Hmm.
And just for you, I'm going to lean away from the mic and hold it for the thumbnail. There we go.
I'll like use just the frame after that for the thumbnail where we're both slightly blurred moving back into
Uh,
place. Yep.
yeah, I like it. Perfect. Perfectly imperfect.
Hmm. Yeah, we keep it real raw here on Natural Tube, if you hadn't noticed. It is
Unscripted.
from mind to microphone to the vastness of the internet. That is how we roll.
It's charming, okay?
Is it?
I like it. Well, I don't, I don't want. It's so dry. It's so dry when somebody's just reading something to you.
Mhm. I hope for entertaining. Maybe we're not the most insightful, maybe we're not the most well spoken, but as long as we are goofy enough to keep you entertained, I'll take that. That's acceptable.
I'm gonna go the other way with it because you have to have confidence and not tell people why you're going to fail. We're great and we're getting
Mhm.
better all the time.
True.
If you compare this video to one of like our first four, you're gonna notice a difference. Although those are
Mhm.
great videos too.
Oh, of
Totally watch
course.
them. How about this? They're B class,
Mhm.
and now I think we're at least in A.
Okay, so now I gotta reach it like S tier is next.
Yeah, S
Yeah.
plus.
Mhm. Is that where we just silently have a conversation with only our eyes and our expressions?
No, no, I'm thinking more like in person, like late night talk show set,
There you go. Yeah, we
something
gotta
like
have some
that,
like neon sign behind us and some comfortable couches.
or one of those setups that all podcasts do now for some reason, where we're together in a room, like we're on a news set, and we've got these big old headphones on, and
Mhm.
we've got our laptops open in front of us because we're doing research live as we record,
Yeah, we
and
are really losing the plot on this conclusion.
we concluded already. And
Mhm.
if you've watched more than one video, you know that the
Mhm.
conclusion was 30 seconds ago, maybe more.
Yeah.
Um, but help each other out in the comments. Put a link to the time code where the conclusion was. All right, that's enough for one day.
I think so.
Come back next week.
Have a good one.